Welcome and good evening. I'm Joan Hartman, the 3rd District County Supervisor, and I know that each of you has been waiting eagerly to learn about the information we're presenting here tonight. And the tremendous attendance we have shows how intensely people care about this beautiful valley where we live. I want to thank St. Mark's and the congregation for allowing us to have this important meeting here today. And before going on for my introductory remarks, I just want to talk a bit about public comment. This is a Brown Act noticed meeting, which means that people who would like to speak on matters not on today's agenda but within our jurisdiction of the ad hoc subcommittee may submit a speaker form to Gina Fisher here and speak right after our introductory remarks. But there will be ample opportunity to speak after the presentation. Our speaker forms have two 1-minute and 3-minute places where you can circle. If you are a 1-minute speaker, then you can go first, and we'll have 3-minute speakers go after. But everyone who wants to speak will be allowed to speak. And if you could get those forms filled out so we know how many are in each category, that would be very helpful. I would first like to sincerely thank Chairman Khan and the Tribe's Business Committee. We've been working intensely since February, and I appreciate the commitment that he has and the entire Business Committee has shown to exploring every option and discussing these issues. We came to their tribal center, they came down to the county, and every meeting the entire Business Committee was there, and that shows tremendous interest and commitment on the part of the tribe. I would secondly like to thank my colleague, 1st District Supervisor Das Williams. He has been an invaluable colleague in these discussions. Ad hoc committees are a huge additional layer on an already very demanding job. He serves on another ad hoc committee, and yet he agreed to serve on this committee, and I'm very grateful because he's been a stalwart in this whole process. I also want to acknowledge the efforts of the previous ad hoc committee, 4th District Supervisor Peter Adam and my predecessor, Supervisor Doreen Farr. They worked tirelessly to set the foundation, and many of you were there and involved, and that really created the basis upon which we could continue discussions. And finally, I want to express my sincerest and most heartfelt gratitude to the people in the community and the San Ynez Valley Coalition and all the people who have shared their thoughts and ideas with me as this process has gone forward. As you know, the original ad hoc committee met in an open Brown Act noticed public meeting. It was a very formal setting, and I talked to various people and said, could you give us space and time to meet in private meetings in settlement discussions? And the community gave us that time. They were patient. They gave us that space. And it did allow us to explore a whole range of options that you just can't do in public because you get too invested. And remember, we're involved in litigation, pending litigation. So there are many things you can't say in public because it could hurt your position in litigation. So I thank everyone who allowed us that opportunity. I'd like to talk a little bit now about the process that we went. I know everyone is eager to get an overview of the terms, but the process for the negotiations took place like this. We had 9 face-to-face meetings with Supervisor Williams and myself, with Chairman Khan and with the entire Business Committee, and also with our council and with our staff. And those meetings were started out pretty open-ended, and we explored various options, and then as we went along, we learned about each other's interests, not just our positions, and we began to explore different ways that we could accommodate those interests. We also had our staff meeting on a regular basis by phone at least once a week, trying to do research, trying to explore these various options that we brought up. And We also, each side, the tribe and the county, hired outside counsel who was available to advise us on questions where we wanted further clarification, further elaboration of whether we were on the right track or not. And in our county, I have to tell you, we have our top personnel, our top people in the CEO's office and the top people in county council working on this issue. So it was a major, major effort on the part of the county. The county approached this negotiation, and Supervisor Williams and myself did, with several objectives, and I'd like to lay those out for you right now. First and foremost is preserving the rural character of the Santa Ynez Valley. Second is respecting tribal sovereignty of the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians. Third, addressing the tribe's need for housing and tribal facilities. Fourth, providing greater certainty about Camp 4 development. And finally, fifth, mitigating for the impacts of the proposed development on site. With these objectives guiding our negotiations, we did explore every option that we could imagine in furtherance of these goals. While we've been negotiating, federal legislation, H.R. 1491, has been moving through House committees. In April, I traveled back to Washington, D.C. and met with staff and with representatives and with senators, and we persuaded Congress to delay action, and we're very fortunate that they did, but now we're being told that this bill will move either with a local agreement or without it, at least through the House of Representatives. Tonight we're going to be presenting the agreement in principle that has been reached through these negotiations, and if it is approved by both parties, then it could, and our intent would be for it to be incorporated into the House bill H.R. 1491. So here's how we'll proceed from here on out. We'll be presenting the tentative agreement, but first I'd like to give Supervisor Williams and Chairman Khan an opportunity to give brief statements. Then our Santa Barbara County Assistant CEO, Terry Mosnisic, and Chairman Khan will each be walking you through different portions of the PowerPoint presentation that elaborate each of the terms in the proposed agreement. Following Ms. Nisic and Chairman Khan's presentation, there will be opportunity for public comment. And as I said, those who are willing to speak for 1 minute will get first option, and then those for 3 will follow. And we'll stay and listen. And when we hear public comment, we're going to be typing down everyone's comments, and you can see on the screen what we'll be typing. We'll also be doing it manually. So we're gathering your comments. We may not get to all the answers tonight. We plan to put answers up on the county website, and we will also be having 2 additional meetings here in the Santa Ynez Valley, and I'll tell you a little bit more about those later. But that will be another opportunity for us to answer your questions, and then later this week the full agreement will be on the website. I should say that because you first have an agreement in principle on the major terms, it takes a lot longer to get all the I's dotted and the T's crossed and reconcile all the different legal documents. And so we've been in that process, and we haven't quite finished. But that agreement in full will be on the website this week. The minute we had the terms, the general terms, the agreement in principle, we scheduled this meeting to come to the community and get your feedback. I ask that you keep tonight's conversation respectful to all parties. Our negotiations have benefited from civility and respect, and I know that we can continue that decorum tonight. And before handing this off to Supervisor Williams and Chairman Khan, I just want to give my take on this agreement. While it may not please everyone, I want you to know that we did openly and full-heartedly explore every option that we could think of. And we arrived at this agreement which achieves protections for land use, meets the tribe's needs for housing, and establishes a precedent for improved relations between the San Ynez Band of Chumash Indians and the county and the community going forward. So this is an opportunity for greater certainty and greater harmony in the future. And I'm especially grateful to Chairman Khan and to the tribe, the business committee, for their work to get us here. And before I turn it over to Chairman Khan, I would like Supervisor Williams to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm in a unique position because before I became a supervisor, I represented the San Ynez Valley in the state legislature for 6 years. When I took office in 2011, my staffer, Darcel Elliott, to whom many of you know, and myself formed a neighborhood committee for the Valley so that we would have two-way communications always with our constituents. I suppose you can guess the issue that came up more than any other, and that was Camp 4. One value that I've also had throughout my time in public office is the protection, to work for the protection and preservation of our open spaces. From view sheds to sensitive habitats, I want to ensure that future generations look back on our work and believe that we found balance and that we got it right. Being involved with this issue for so long, one thing about this most recent process to me is very clear. The Valley is lucky to have Joan Hartman representing you on the Board of Supervisors. She was a part of that neighborhood committee as far back as 2011 and has been involved and aware of community concerns regarding Camp 4 all that time. I can tell you from firsthand experience that Joan has truly represented the interests of the San Ynez Valley in these negotiations and went above and beyond to get the best deal possible. While this agreement in principle does address the critical items and goals that Supervisor Hartman indicated, should also be made clear that this agreement is solely focused on Camp 4. It is not global in nature. That is, that it does not include other currently held or future properties. However, this agreement in principle and the civil and respectful relationships that have been formed are foundational to discussions between the county and the tribe moving forward. And now I'd like to introduce Kenneth Khan, Chairman of the San Ynez Band of Chumash.
Well, Das and Joan, thank you very much. So, you know, this process has been a long one, and you know, we certainly appreciate the patience of the community, the patience of our membership and the tribe, and you know, tribal housing has been really a focus for many years, and the importance of being able to provide support of our cultural programming, our customs and traditions is very important. So I thank everyone who has done some outreach with me, with some of my colleagues, on some of these tough issues that we have when it comes to mitigating these impacts. Want to recognize my board and thank you for recognizing them as well. They were there every step of the way through these meetings. So our Vice Chairman Raul Armenta, who is here tonight, our Secretary Treasurer Maxine Littlejohn, who is here tonight, Gary Pace, committee member, and Mike Lopez, committee member, are on travels. But you know, our tough conversations and outreach to community members, both within reservation and out in the community, were very important to getting us to this point. So I'm very appreciative to all of those that have been involved in the process. Sam, our right-hand man, and also county staff. I know that you guys were really key to helping us with communications, with improving. And you know, most importantly, this is a step in the right direction to be able to have a dialogue, to be able to agree and disagree, and be able to focus on bringing the community together, which has been one of the most important points from our perspective. with that, I couldn't voice our appreciation more for the open dialogue and being a part of this open process. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to ask if there's anyone who would like to give public comment for matters not on today's agenda, but within our jurisdiction of the ad hoc committee. Do we have any general speaker slips? With that, then, I will turn this over to Terry Mosnisic. She is our Assistant County CEO. That means she's the second in command. She's been involved with this issue with the previous ad hoc committee and even earlier. And along with County Council, she has worked countless late nights and weekends, and she will give part of the presentation, and then she will turn it over to Chairman Khan to talk about some aspects of the project as well.
And I just want to add, there's still about 4 seats up here in the front, so if anybody gets tired back there, there is some seating up here in the front.
Okay, we'll go ahead and begin. Good evening again, everyone. Again, my name is Terry Nisich, Assistant CEO with the county. It's really a pleasure to be here tonight with all of you, and we're very excited about presenting this agreement and a summary of what we've achieved. I'd like to start out, I'll give a little bit of background. Some of this might be very familiar to many of you, but for those that may not be as familiar with the project and the process, I'll go over some of those. I'm going to wait just a sec for that PowerPoint to come up. If I click, will that throw you off, Ken? Okay, in terms of background, Camp 4 project, as many of you know, encompasses over 1,400 acres. The property was acquired by the San Ynez Band of the Chumash Indians in 2010. It is also under a multi-year Agricultural Williamson Act preserved contract. The environmental assessment for Camp 4 identifies 2 primary development alternatives. Alternative A consists of about 1,433 acres to be converted into 143 5-acre residential lots. Alternative B consists of 143 1-acre residential lots and 30 acres for tribal facilities. It is Alternative B that we will be referencing via this agreement. Just a very quick overview of the location of Camp 4, as you can see on the slide. And I believe many of you might have the handouts that we also provided for notes pages if you'd like to follow there as well. The red outline represents the project boundary for Camp 4. We've also highlighted the primary roadway of 154, and we're showing the project here again in relation to the township of San Ynez as well as the reservation itself. A little bit about the ad hoc subcommittee. Over 2 years ago now, the Board of Supervisors formally formed the ad hoc subcommittee on tribal matters to begin discussions with the tribe regarding this issue. We began again in August of 2015, and then the Board of Supervisors renewed the direction to the ad hoc in February of 2017. Just to restate the purpose of the subcommittee and the direction of the Board of Supervisors, they directed that we engage the San Ynez Band of Chumash Indians in discussions related to land use and financial matters of mutual concern that include but are not limited to a waiver of sovereign immunity, and we'll discuss this waiver a little later in the presentation, the San Ynez Valley properties of interest inclusive of Camp 4, the Mooney and Escobar properties, the 350-acre Triangle property, and other general topics between the county and the tribe as appropriate. So there was specific as well as some general direction provided for the initiation of the ad hoc subcommittee. In terms of the previous ad hoc that Supervisor Hartman mentioned with previous Supervisor Farr and Supervisor Adam, they met in public meetings with the tribe on 9 occasions. All of those meetings are still on our ad hoc committee website. The agendas as well as all of the filmed video is still available for you to reference at any time. They met on 9 occasions, as I referenced, from September of 2015 to October of 2016. They discussed the waiver of sovereign immunity as directed, term, municipal finance, and a category that we termed future use of land and limits, and that included topics such as gaming, Williamson Act, and fee to trust lands. A little bit of a recent history in terms of the background of the ad hoc committee over the course of the last 2 years and other events that have occurred since the ad hoc has been in effect. As I mentioned, in August of 2015, this board established and clarified the role of the ad hoc subcommittee, and we began a series of open public meetings. In January 10th of 2017, Supervisors Hartman and Williams were appointed to serve on the ad hoc subcommittee. On January 10th of 2017, the board directed our county council to initiate federal litigation if the Bureau of Indian Affairs Regional Director decision was affirmed to take Camp 4 into trust. On January 19th of 2017, the Interior affirmed the Regional Director's decision to in fact take Camp 4 into trust and concluded that adequate NEPA review had been conducted on the project. On January 28th, as directed, the County Council filed litigation in federal district court. In February, the Board of Supervisors renewed the short-term advisory ad hoc committee, and at that time, the board authorized the subcommittee to engage in discussions outside of the open public meeting process. So in late February of that same month, the new ad hoc subcommittee began discussions. Supervisor Hartman described some of the key guiding points, which led to many of the terms that you'll hear tonight. As mentioned before, it was critically important to build on the early work of the prior ad hoc committee process and the work of the tribe in the open public process. As I'll mention later, there were a number of terms that were discussed and agreed to during that first series of meetings. It was important to recognize tribal sovereignty and the right to self-governance. We recognize the need for tribal housing. We recognize the critical services provided by both the county and the tribe to shared and unique constituents. The goal, as mentioned, was to protect the rural character of the San Ynez Valley and provide greater certainty regarding development of Camp 4 and greater certainty regarding timing for that development. It was also a goal to establish a very strong model of government-to-government relationships going forward. And then finally, a goal was to address the fiscal and environmental impacts potentially generated from development. As mentioned earlier, we discussed a broad range of options suggested by the county and the tribe and the community. Again, much of what was provided via the public process was again brought into bear during the more recent discussions. We explored a number of options that were a bit outside of the box. We challenged ourselves, we challenged the process, we asked a lot of questions to achieve our mutual goals. The discussions were at times intense, but I would say at all times very sincere and thorough. So where are we today? Similar in terms of key terms of the prior meetings. We again broke them into 6 primary topic areas. Again, the waiver of sovereign immunity, the term, a mitigation of fiscal and environmental impact section, safety and code compliance, which was also very much discussed as part of the prior series of meetings, land use, and then a section that we're terming dismissal and support provisions. So let me go ahead and go over the first term. This should look very familiar to many of you that participated in the earlier ad hoc committee discussions. The waiver of sovereign immunity was a fundamental topic to moving ahead with this agreement. Having that enforceable waiver was also a direction of the board in the prior information that I read to you in terms of the direction to us when they established the ad hoc subcommittee back in August of 2015. The waiver is also consistent with the waiver that is in place in our tribe and law enforcement agreement. It's a limited waiver of sovereign immunity by the tribe with a consent to jurisdiction and no exhaustion of tribal remedies. And the tribe expressly and irrevocably waived for the term of the agreement its right to assert its sovereign immunity from suit and enforcement and execution of any ensuing judgment or award, and consented to be sued in the federal courts of the United States or the state courts of the state of California, provided that the dispute was solely limited to issues arising under this agreement. There are no third-party beneficiaries with this waiver. Again, this wording was agreed to back with the prior ad hoc subcommittee process, and I believe it was actually resolved in September, so over a year ago. The term. There are 4 really critical items to the effective date of the agreement and the overall term. So the agreement as constructed indicates that the agreement be effective on the latest of the dates upon each of the following conditions being met. We do need to have approval of the agreement by the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors, and they will be considering that in October. Approval of the General Council of the tribe, which includes approval of the tribe by a vote and authorization for Chairman Kahn to sign the agreement. There must be dismissal of the county's federal litigation. And finally, there must be written approval by the Secretary of the Interior or a written determination that the Secretary of the Interior does not need to approve this agreement. Overall, the agreement would be in effect until December 31st of 2040. Okay, the next term. Mitigation of fiscal and environmental impacts. As part of the agreement, we indicated that the development of Camp 4 property may, in some cases, result in impacts and costs to the County of Santa Barbara, but the parties agreed that the county does not have permitting authority over the development of the lands held in trust, and that the payments made under this agreement do not constitute taxes, exactions, or fees. The payments are also approximate offsets, and that's important, to the potential losses and impacts to the county, and are intended to support an approximate level of service to Camp 4 and the affected communities. So what does that work out to? What we have is that the tribe will pay the county a flat annual fee of $178,500 due in 4 equal quarterly payments. And the payments would expire upon expiration of the agreement on that December 31st, 2040 date. The tribe will also comply with all of the terms of the Williamson Act contract on Camp 4 until December 31st, 2023, and then payments would begin after the expiration of the Williamson Act contract at December 31, 2023. If, however, the Williamson Act contract is canceled, or terminated prior to that time through the passage of legislation, H.R. 1491, the payments to the county would begin upon the completion of the first home slated for development on Camp 4. Payments to the county, we have agreed, would be credits related to payments due section under 5.2 pursuant to section 5.3 of the Tribal State Gaming Compact, and the county has agreed to support the tribe in obtaining those credits as provided for per their compact with the state.
My turn.
It's your turn.
Mitigation monitoring plan, water, an important issue for us all. Water use in a drought, no increase. In a non-drought, up to 4 acre-feet per year. 2005 green building guidelines and LEED for homes criteria. Indoor plumbing, highest efficiency fixtures and fittings available. Less landscaping for clustered 1 acre lots than 5 acre lots. Native landscaping and drought tolerant species emphasized. Tertiary wastewater treatment plant and recycling. Recycled water for landscaping. Recycled water for plumbing in all government buildings. Recycled water for vineyards and all irrigation as feasible. Reduction in vineyard by 50 acres. And corresponding decrease in water use by 50 acre-feet. Areas outside of buildings and roads would be kept as permeable surfaces to the extent practicable to promote groundwater recharge. Rooftop runoff directed towards vegetated areas and splash blocks and not underground storm drains, again to promote groundwater recharge. Special limits during periods of declarated as drought by county, no turf grass irrigation. Separate from agreement and EA, the tribe will participate in SGMA, the SGMA process. Land use, the tribe to comply with the final EA and the FONSI and alternative B of the final EA as adopted in May of 2014. No buildings on Camp 4 within 985 feet of Highway 154. All required mitigation measures on the FONSI and final EA, Scenario B will be implemented. Compliance with the FONSI and final EA also shall not preclude solar energy on Camp 4. However, forms of solar energy would be prohibited within the 985-foot buffer along 154. Where is my 16? Missing a page. Oh, the map. The most important one. So we're looking at alternative B. This is something that the tribe has had an opportunity to share with the community in the past, in our early phases. I know that we've had a number of discussions using these maps. And I think there's also a handout. So this was the best scenario for open space. We've highlighted the residential zone, the agricultural zone, the open space recreation zone, resource management zone for the riparian corridors, special purpose zone for public utilities, roads, view corridor. There is 30 acres for government purposes. This would be a government administration building. So this is our preliminary plan that we have talked over numerous times. Back to you, Terry.
Okay, our next area is safety and code compliance. Again, this is something that was discussed via the prior ad hoc committee meeting for those of you that attended, and those conversations continued throughout this process. It was critical for the county to ensure safety and code compliance overall. So the terms are that the compliance and monitoring will be overseen by mutually agreed upon third-party consultants. The tribal ordinance requires the code mitigation monitoring and enforcement program. There also is a handout which is entitled, I believe, Appendix C, which outlines the full mitigation monitoring program that was referenced in some of the previous slides, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention as well. So as part of the ordinance requiring code and mitigation monitoring and enforcement, qualified licensed professionals must be either California registered licensed architects or engineers with relevant experience or California licensed. They will also use qualified project inspectors and use California Building Code and the Public Safety Code on all development on the Camp 4 project. The next provision is dismissal of litigation and support provisions, and we just wanted to highlight this specifically. As I referenced earlier, there is a provision that once agreement is reached that the county will again dismiss its federal litigation, and it would support HR 1491 with amendments. So in terms of next steps and what happens following these meetings, we will be setting a hearing on October 3rd of the Board of Supervisors for an actual hearing of the full agreement on October 17th. So I just want to be clear about that. The set hearing is a time when the document or the agreement is put on the record for the Board of Supervisors. The time when it would actually be heard would be the October 17 date, just to be clear. We plan on a second, if not third, public meeting with the community. The next meeting, the second meeting, is set for October 5th, and we have tentatively scheduled a meeting for the 9th, and there is a handout that was provided at the front of the room or outside the room with a list of all of these dates that I'm providing to you now. The next steps also is that the agreement must be considered by the tribal membership. They must review and vote on that agreement, as I mentioned previously. It'll be considered by the board again on October 17th at a noticed public meeting. We will post everything on our ad hoc committee website as well as the Board of Supervisors' regular agenda processes. We will then begin working with the Department of the Interior. As I mentioned earlier, the Secretary of the Interior does in fact need to either approve this agreement or determine that his or her agreement is not necessary. And then we will begin to work with legislators to amend 1491 to reference this agreement specifically. And that concludes my component of the presentation. We have put up here our tribal website again, where we will be providing all of the information. There have been several handouts provided today, and I know we probably ran out of those. So I will make sure those are posted. And then we do anticipate that the video for this meeting will be posted at some point tomorrow afternoon. So I'll turn it back to you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. So now is time for public comment, and everyone who wants to speak will have an opportunity to speak. As I said, the people willing to go for 1 minute will get first position in line to speak. This meeting is being recorded, including all your comments. We will be typing up the comments, and we will also be handwriting the comments. And I'd also like to mention that we have a slip that was at the front when you came out at the table. If you have comments or questions that you don't want to get up in front of everyone to ask, you can write those down and pass it in hard copy, and we'll be compiling what we hear tonight and what we receive. You can also type in comments on questions on the website. We'll be compiling those and either answering them on the website to the best of our ability, given the pending litigation, or we will be starting our next meeting on October 5th with a summary of those comments. The purpose of today's meeting is really to describe what the terms are and to get a sense of what the questions are about those terms. We want to share a clear understanding of what we have come to our understanding about. And then there will be 2 other meetings. I want to emphasize that, October 5th and October 9th. You'll get the full agreement on the website this week and have an opportunity then to comment on all of that. It's not quite final. We've been working very hard, but it will be final this week. So with that, Ms. Fisher, would you like, and would people, when the first and second names are called, please start getting in line, because that way we don't waste a lot of time as people walk up to the mic. And you're welcome to come up here.
Good evening. We have 7 one-minute speaker slips submitted so far. If you have any speaker slips for 1 minute or 3 minutes, please bring them up to me. The first speaker for 1 minute is Richard Klein, followed by Sharon Klein, and followed by Casey DeFranco. And there are more 1 minute speakers that are not yet up on that list.
Thank you for the presentation and the opportunity to ask questions. Mine is quite specific and quite short. Obviously, the full detail of the waiver of sovereign immunity is important. When can we see that detail? And what will prevent the tribe from simply deciding at some future that it will not continue to waive its sovereign immunity? What then? Will the county and tribe jointly seek congressional codification of this provision? Thank you.
Next speaker is Sharon Klein, followed by Casey DeFranco, followed by Kim Schweitzer.
Presuming the full agreement is presented on October 3rd, why does the committee have only 2 weeks to analyze and comment on the specifics of the agreement? The devil is in the details, and we should have time to consider those.
The next speaker is Casey DeFranco, followed by Kim Schweitzer, followed by Mike Hadley.
Okay. When can we see the full terms of the agreement? The agreement that's going to go to the Board of Supervisors. And is this agreement, once you've got it all solidified, a final, or will it be modified based on public opinion?
The next speaker is Kim Schweitzer, followed by Mike Hadley, followed by Nancy Hunsicker.
Mr. Kahn went through the issue of water usage very quickly. Unfortunately, he's much more familiar with what the proposal is than we are. And so I have a question as to the usage of the water, and is there a proposed agreement limit to the amount of water that can be used by the tribe under this new proposal? Does it address the exporting of water off the land? And how would such limitations be enforced if there was such an agreement? Thank you.
The next speaker is Mike Hadley, followed by Nancy Hunsicker, followed by Penny Knowles.
This is regard to water. If there is overpumping of water occurring, what legal action can be taken to stop it? Will it require penalties paid by the tribe with a specific method of enforcing those penalties? Also, will the tribe be required to pay the legal fees and costs of any enforcement of water limitations? I also have one more question pertaining to water. Would all water barrels be required to be metered and open to inspection by the county?
The next speaker is Nancy Hornsicker, followed by Penny Knowles, followed by Nancy Lipmore, and that would conclude the 1-minute speaker slips I have right now.
Thank you very much. The mitigation fees for this project are listed at $178,500, yet this is a very large project, and a comparable project of this size, the developer could expect to pay millions of dollars in fees. So we would like clarification on how you arrived at such a small figure. Additionally, why is this agreement so short? It only runs till 2040, which is 23 years. That's extremely short term, and what's going to happen after that? And lastly, why is there no height restriction with respect to the buildings? Thank you.
The next speaker is Penny Knowles, followed by Nancy Lipmore.
Most of my questions have already been asked, but I am disheartened by the fact that this agreement will not address any future land acquisitions, current or future land acquisitions, and how we're going to deal with that in the future. So it's not something that we can just walk away from because we're going to have it again and again in the future.
The last 1-minute speaker is Nancy Lipmore. Lipman.
You said that on 154 you have 954 feet between the properties and the roads. What about on baseline? You have nothing you have said. I live on baseline. I'd like to know. Thank you.
That concludes the 1-minute speaker slips. Moving on to 3-minute speakers. The first speaker is Bill Crouch, followed by Karen Jones, followed by Nan Walden.
I'm Bill Crouch, Chairman of the San Ynez Valley Coalition, and we thank you for the opportunity to share with you the views of the San Ynez Valley Coalition on this critical issue. Coalition member organizations represent the views of thousands of San Ynez Valley residents and include San Ynez Valley Concerned Citizens, No More Slots, and We Watch. The mission of the San Ynez Valley Coalition is to ensure that San Ynez Valley residents have a voice in land use decisions affecting our water, environment, public safety, and economy. We oppose fee to trust efforts by the San Ynez Band of Chumash Indians due to the potential for unregulated development. At the outset, I want to be clear that the Coalition views the issues you are considering as land use matters. Even before the tribe owned Camp 4, the community had spoken out about development on this parcel that would have destroyed our valley's unique agricultural and rural heritage. We support the tribe being able to meet its housing and community facility needs. We stand ready to work toward that end in a manner that respects our community plan and county land use regulations. However, we are troubled by the process to date. After months of closed-door meetings, we are asked to attend a meeting in which we are provided cursory, summary information. The PowerPoint references a memorandum of understanding. Yet we have not been provided that document. I am not certain as to how we are expected to provide any meaningful comment that would be helpful to fulfill your responsibilities to your respective constituents. We look forward to seeing the agreement, evaluating it, and offering our suggestions on how it can best address the issues we outline above. As previously suggested, we firmly believe that 3 fundamental principles must be reflected in the agreement. These include: 1, development must respect the county land use regulations and plans. 2, the agreement must be perpetually enforceable. And number 3, comprehensive in scope and address all Chumash property. Again, the coalition stands ready to work with all stakeholders to develop an agreement which enables the tribe to move forward with its needs and preserves our valley and future generations. I thank you for your time and the effort that you've put into this today. Thank you.
The next speaker is Karen Jones, followed by Nan Walden, followed by Dick Walden.
I don't know if it's working or not. I usually can be heard with or without one. Okay, well, good deal. I'm glad I have an opportunity to speak. I wish I would have had more notice that the deal was done. And I've been listening to the other speakers, and I think they've all made wonderful points. Probably for me, the most disappointing thing here is we're being told what the agreement is, and this is following closed meetings. We are a transparent community. We live in a government that is transparent. And so to work do a deal with a group that is not transparent, it makes it very difficult for us to know exactly what happened. I believe Joan worked very hard because I've seen her in action and she's a hard worker. But I can't really say for sure what went on in the meetings or what kind of bargain was struck because it was a closed meeting. And I worry about the future. Are all of our meetings going to be closed when it has to do with the land use points that people have articulated so far? Another thing that is troubling me, well, there's a couple of biggies, and one relates to what I was just talking about. We're talking about October like it's not next week. October's next week. So to ask for, I don't even feel like I'm being asked for input. I think I'm being told, here's your medicine. You know, which orifice do you want it to go down? That's what it feels like. So the other thing that's bothering me here is this capitulation to Doug LaMalfa, the guy in District 1, his 1491 bill. This is Congressman LaMalfa's 3rd attempt to get this fee to trust thing through. And the newspapers, you know, the ones with the big casino ads, I mean, newspapers are out, man. It's internet, and the only thing keeping these paper publications alive are these full-page color ads. So they write that this is a done deal, and we have the photo op of signing that's already done. Well, if it's already done, why is the county agreeing to get on board with it? And I respect you, Joan, once again. I know how hard you work. I don't think you would ever sell out. I worry about how strong you would be. But you meeting with anybody in D.C. did not change anything on 1491. The only thing that will change that will be public will. And so we're relying on a few leaders, some politicians who get donations, et cetera, to do what's best for us. And if we want to protect our individual sovereignty as native-born people, as I am, then we need to get on the phone and we need to let Congress know how we feel about this bill and that we reject this closed-door deal that was made in our behalf. 2, 1, 5.
The next speaker is Nan Walden.
I would ask people not to clap. This is not a sporting event. This is very serious. There are very serious rights and obligations. There's enough conflict in the world out there. We're better than that, please.
The next speaker is Nan Walden, followed by Dick Walden, followed by Mike Brady.
Respected chairpersons and members, as landowners and members of the San Ynez Valley Coalition, we support and respect the right for the Chumash to provide housing and economic development for its members. We honestly hope this ad hoc committee would find a solution that provides certainty and benefit to all of our Valley residents and neighbors. That is why we are truly saddened and disappointed in the way this process has been rushed and rammed through. Sadly, this will not benefit the tribe, the county, or the Valley residents. To roll out dribs and drabs of a partial agreement, mostly on a Sunday, barely 24 hours before this meeting to provide public comment, is unacceptable, undemocratic, and undermines the public's faith that you will listen to or take seriously our comments, which actually could improve the agreement and longstanding relations. How can we intelligently comment on a document we have not seen? As a lawyer with legislative experience who's also drafted legislation to benefit Native Americans, I can assure you that the written document matters and that these areas of tribal, federal, environmental, and water law are very complex. Many of us have serious concerns that this MOU, which we have not seen, is not enforceable, or either as a standalone agreement or as part of federal legislation, and that the mitigation measures are illusory as well. What happens if when the county dismisses its lawsuit prior to a federal bill being signed into law? What happens if that bill is amended or does not pass? The lawsuit has been dismissed with prejudice, as we understand. Also, how will the county be able to protect the interests of the citizens regarding Camp 4 after the agreement expires in 23 years? The compressed schedule is truly absurd, and sadly it will create more suspicion and distrust instead of building community consensus. And for that, we hope that you will reconsider the schedule, reconsider providing the documents. Remember that most of us have jobs and families and other commitments and cannot drop everything to work on this full time. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Dick Walden, followed by Mike Brady, followed by Jim Marino.
Members of the Board of Supervisors and members of the San Ynez Band of the Chumash Indians, my name is Dick Walden. We
can't hear you very well.
Sorry, my name is Dick Walden. Unfortunately, this appears to create two classes of citizens, which is wrong, if that's the case. And let me give an example. The $178,000 of in lieu fees, I believe they're properly called, is equal to 7 parcels which Nan and I pay taxes on. 7 parcels. And here we're talking about 143 parcels, plus a lot of land. It just seems to me that this is not being equal under the law, and it's not American. Secondly, it's already been brought up that this less than 30-day window for approval is totally contrary to any, that I'm aware of, any federal or state standards of time to fairly have public input and give the public the opportunity to fully digest this document. Thank you.
The next speaker is Mike Brady, followed by Jim Marino, followed by David Cousineau.
Mike Brady. I want to thank Joan for her efforts. I think they've been sincere. I also want to say that I understand, and I thought it was very interesting that you think a core to this is certainty. Certainty and uncertainty. Uncertainty causes instability, and that's a basic you find in Economics 101. It appears that this 136-member tribe will control land use in the San Ynez Valley. This deal gives us 143 houses and a tribal center on Camp 4 for now. County officials will wash their hands of Camp 4, its development by the tribe left in the future unknown. The uncertainty remains. The triangle, 365 acres between Camp 4 and the casino resort, will be next. That uncertainty remains. In 2016, Chairman Armenta threatened to take all 22 properties owned by the tribe from fee to trust. Uncertainty still remains. The Chumash sponsored a bill in the State Assembly which, in its original language, removed the tribe from tribal properties from property taxes once an application was filed for them to bring the property from fee to trust. Does the city of Solvang or the city of Buellton feel comfortable about this? Does the South Coast feel comfortable? Prime beachfront property is for sale right now along the Gaviota coast. What happens when the Chumash decide it has maxed out its economic potential in the valley? This uncertainty remains. In 1999, before the Buellton City Council, Chairman Armenta said, "We have no plans for hotels to compete with Buellton, and there will be no alcohol served on the gaming floor." In 2000, he said, "The parking structure will be designed to respect community height and design standards." In 2001, it was said that the new gaming structure would not be large and would only consolidate existing gaming activities. In 2002, the tribe has no plans for a hotel. In 2003, liquor sales will be confined to fine dining facilities only. In 2016, March, Sam Cohen presented the tribe's vision for their future development of Camp 4 and the Triangle property, about 1,800 acres. Was this simply a scribble on a piece of paper? At best, this settlement kicks the can down the road. For a number of years on Camp 4, and the uncertainty remains. It cedes control of land use planning to the San Ynez Band of Chumash Indians, which will dictate land use in this valley based on its own economic prerogatives.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Jim Marino, followed by David Cousineau, followed by Leslie Moss-Teller.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My biggest concern is that 2 years ago, when this matter was referred to ad hoc committee, was for the purposes of having transparent public input to arrive at an agreement. We have a lot of smart people here, as I hope you understand. And so I'm wondering how, after 6 months of secret negotiations, all we can come up with that's presented to us is a vague PowerPoint summation, I guess it would be, of what's already been agreed to, apparently. And just looking through it, where's the detail? I mean, if you understand anything about Indian law, which I know a little bit about, the most important thing is the details, the specifics of the contract. Otherwise, you don't have an enforceable contract. I looked through this PowerPoint. I see there's not even a prohibition against gaming. There's no mention, and somebody said this before, how much water can be drawn from the aquifer. Why, for example, is there a credit? You know, when they passed Proposition 1A, they had a segment called the Special Distribution Fund, which was designed to lessen the impact in communities of gambling casinos that are located there. So why would there be a credit in this contract for the services and infrastructure provided to a housing development? It has nothing to do with it. So why would there be a credit from the mitigation fund? It doesn't belong in there. Why does this contract end in 2040? Does that mean that the county will stop providing public services and infrastructure on that same date? Or is the county obligated to go on ad infinitum providing public services and infrastructure? I just don't understand how we could be at this point, after all of this discussion, and have such a skimpy, vague outline about important, specific terms of this contract. And so hopefully, somehow, we're going to see that, and hopefully we'll have more time than 2 weeks to give you the input of all these smart folks out here who could probably give you some stuff that you could use if it was really wanted. Thank you.
The next speaker is David Cousineau, followed by Leslie Mosteller, followed by Alex Jones.
Good evening. My name is David Cousineau. I'm here from Capello and Noel, representing San Lucas Ranch. Is that any better? Okay. 6 years ago, my law firm sent a letter to the Board of Supervisors explaining the requirements, the amendments that are required to the county plan for entering into this type of an agreement. 18 months ago, Barry Capello, the managing partner of our firm, stood before this ad hoc committee and stressed the importance of the process. He also stressed that this process was not complying with the county requirements. He further said that we were authorized to sue on behalf of our client if this agreement was entered into following this improper process. The agreement that was outlined today does not, I'm sorry, there was one other important thing that he stressed. This would be a public benefit lawsuit. That means that the county would be responsible for our legal fees. In addition, there would be a multiplier attached to our fees, which would increase the fees significantly. The agreement that was outlined today does not comply with the county process. And the county plan requires an amendment for the county to enter into this agreement. And that amendment must consider impacts to the community. That has not been considered. There is no analysis of that. The presentation that we all saw today mentioned the final EA, and it mentioned the FONSI, and it mentioned Part B of the EA. The FONSI, the county has described as an illegal FONSI. Not my words, the county's words. Regarding the environmental assessment, the county has called out a number of deficiencies. The impact has pointed out that the EA does not consider impact to the community, impact to groundwater, impact to surface water, insects, diseases, weeds that will be on neighbors' properties. That has not been considered. The county also identified deficiencies because it didn't consider land use regulations, agricultural conversion, threatened or endangered species. It didn't consider taking less land. It didn't consider the impacts of the public health and safety, including the increase in traffic. The county even said that based on the environmental assessment, it could not determine how many people the project would bring into the county, and therefore could not determine the impacts to the county. These, just 1 minute on this point. These documents are not reliable. I ask you to talk to county council and ask county council how these judicial admissions, this is from a complaint that was filed by the county.
And that is your time, and we have your letter. Thank you.
Well, just let me.
The next speaker is Leslie Mosteller, followed by Alex Jones, followed by Wendy Tillman.
How this will impact your credibility and the questions that will be asked. Have county council explain that to you.
I am Leslie Mosteller. I have so many concerns about what's happening. Where are the details? Why are they not shared with us today? Why is this not a universal agreement? Is water exporting specifically prohibited? Who will bear the financial burden of policing and enforcing an agreement? Why should we rush to give up the finely crafted land use plan? My greatest concern tonight is about time. Time is our most precious resource, and time is how we show regard and respect. We have a unique opportunity tonight, and I am concerned tonight about the respect shown to the citizens of the San Ynez Valley. After 2 long years of growing public concern during this ad hoc process, this committee called a last-minute meeting, gave a last-minute agenda, shared a summary presentation online over a weekend. All of this activity happened after a lengthy 6+ month process of meetings behind closed doors. This community gathered tonight in an emergency fashion, only to have read to us out loud the same summary level document published online a couple of days ago. No detail, no schedule, no information of substance. This waste of our time is not taken lightly or thought to be accidental. After many months waiting for input to the process, this summary presentation appears a demonstration of disregard and disrespect. This is an intelligent and resourceful community that consistently demonstrates our care and concern for the Valley. Over the many years of this issue, the community has become more engaged, not less. This community has become more vocal, not less. And this community has demonstrated a willingness and an ability to make our voices heard in Sacramento and Washington, D.C., independent of our elected officials' willingness to represent us. This time wasted tonight reading aloud a cursory and meaningless presentation is remarkable. The choice to not give meaningful information speaks volumes. Are we all window dressing? Long after you have left office, we will make this community our home. Protecting our water with an explicit and an enforceable agreement to prohibit water exportation and overuse is a requirement. We don't have that now. Compliance with the land use planning and regulations is a requirement. High-density housing east of 154 is opposed to this, and a universal solution is a requirement. Do not rush into this. It's too important. An enforceable universal agreement that respects current land use is within our skill set and our capacity.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Alex Jones, followed by Wendy Tillman, followed by Dennis Beebe.
Hello, my name is Alex Jones. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's been pretty amazing listening to this smart, intelligent, passionate group of citizens come together. I'm a fourth-generation son of the San Ynez Valley. I'm a proud member of the Wall of Honor of the San Ynez High School. I am raising my children, the fifth generation, in the San Ynez Valley. Sorry if I get emotional. It's just, thinking about my home, our home, being changed forever, irreversibly, is unacceptable. And especially the way that it's been forced upon us. I mean, not only in this lack of notification to this beautiful PowerPoint, this whole process seems very forced. And I'm not sure if anybody in here has ever bought a used car. Kind of feels the same. I feel like, well, you better hurry up, end of the month's coming, you better hurry up and get in. Whenever there's pressure involved in a sale, the person getting sold to is not getting a good deal. So I would like to thank everybody here in this room for showing up and continuing to fight. I would like to thank Supervisor Hartman, because I know she works hard, and I know that she knows this isn't over. We still have an opportunity. And I would also like to thank the young lawyer, gentleman David, I believe, because you gave me hope.
The next speaker is Wendy Tillman, followed by Dennis Beebe, followed by Larry Jett. Wendy Tillman, followed by Dennis Beebe, followed by Larry Jett.
Using the color diagram that was presented outside, I've done a few calculations. Using the color diagram presented outside the door, I've done some calculations. I calculate about 60% of open space, including recreational space, 14% agricultural space, 16% structural development, and about 9% non-developable or additional open space. If that's accurate, I commend you. The conclusions I've drawn that about 83% will either be in open space or agricultural use is an incredible result if it's achieved. And I've lived here 30 years and I've watched this dispute since it was voted at the state level. And I'm glad to see progress. And democracy is not pretty, it's not perfect, it's not soft, and it's not smooth. And of all the people in this room, I recognize barely a handful or two who have been involved as much as the folks at this dais have, especially Joan. I've given my 10 years on 2 different boards. One of them was the general plan. And I'm sure that Washington is putting pressure on this process. And if I'm wrong, then say so. But the reading between the lines is that there are deadlines coming down the pike that are forcing agreements that may not be perfect, that may need refinement, that may need revisions. But the guiding principle of democracy is that we are a volunteer, acquiescent community. We don't have policemen on every corner. We don't have policemen in every house. And for that reason, my years as a lawyer and my background in litigation is that a settlement does not leave everybody happy. In fact, a real settlement doesn't leave anybody happy. And listening to the comments I've heard in this room, there's plenty of unhappy people here. But the perfection that is being striven for or reached for is unattainable. And if Washington is pressuring by putting time limits at the Beltway that have to be met here, or there will be nothing voluntary about the resolution, I think the public's entitled to know that that's in play. And as far as this being a condensed timeline, people have been fighting over this for over a decade and a half. The issues are very, very clear. Thank you very much for what you've done. It's well appreciated. I do have a couple of questions, however, if I haven't run out of my 3 minutes. What height limitations apply to the structures?
I think you have, but we have the form that you could fill out and we'll get you answers.
And I've used my 3 minutes.
Thank you.
I'll send the questions.
The next speaker is Dennis Beebe, followed by Larry Jett, followed by Jerry Shepard.
Good evening, everyone. I share many of the concerns of the previous speakers. This congressional committee, which I don't believe has any representation from the Valley or even from the county, who have really forced these negotiations on you. I'm concerned you are expending a lot of resources to come up with this agreement, as unpopular as it appears to be tonight, without seeing it. And what's this congressional committee going to do with it? What guarantee or promise do we have from Washington, D.C. that they will even consider it? They have not shown much consideration for community input so far. To me, this whole H.R. 1491 is just an end run about and around the BIA system. So I'm worried that you're going to expend a lot of work and maybe come up with an agreement that people will bite their tongue and agree, and it'll go into the circular file in Washington, D.C. So that's a concern. Environmental approval. So we have a final EA, but what happens if the land that we're talking about goes into the reservation? Who's the environmental approval authority if it's reservation land? Sounds like the tribe to me. So I don't know what this environmental assessment really means if the land goes into the reservation. In fact, I didn't see that addressed. What happens to this agreement if the tribe is successful in taking their land into the reservation? What happens to this agreement? Water share. I would like to know whether or not the tribe will comply with the state's mandate that we all start managing our groundwater. Every water purveyor in the valley, every water user in the valley is required to comply with the Groundwater Sustainability Management Act. Will the tribe? That's a question. $178,000 a year, wow. I'd sure like to know where that comes from. It sounds like about 2 hours of receipts on a good night at the casino. But the devil is in the details. I'd like to know how much water is being projected to be used by this development compared to what's being used today. And I never saw the casino mentioned in the slides. It's kind of like the elephant in the room, isn't it? Isn't there an agreement that says we'll never develop any gaming facilities on this land? I didn't see it mentioned. So I'm looking forward to the full agreement, but I hope you give us time to respond.
The next speaker is Larry Jett, followed by Jerry Shepard, and the final speaker slip is Lansing Duncan.
Good evening. My name is Larry Jett, and we happen to live about 500 feet from where the frontage of this property is on Baseline. I'm really angry. That's really about the bottom line, and the motion really isn't going to help this, but so far I haven't heard anybody that is the constituents of the Board of Supervisors say, gee, what a great idea this is. I do understand, I'm beginning to understand what a cram down is. I don't get a vote. If I take 143 houses, and let's say, for argument's sake, they're going to be worth $750 grand apiece. That's about 110 million bucks, and something over 1% in property tax. We're talking about $1.5 million a year that the county's given away, and we get back 178,000, which goes a credit to something that the tribe is already obligated to pay. It's kind of like, where's the peanut under the shell? We're very dependent where I live about water and the aquifer underneath. Right now this property is zoned for, I don't know, 10 or 12 houses with some additional agricultural which will use water, but with 143 homes, I mean, it got to the point at this drought that we just went through, I was hoping every time I turned on the water something would come out. I think the one last thing that, this 2040 business. I mean, and I'm being a little facetious, it's a little bit like a pig in a poke. I mean, at the end of 2040, as I'm understanding, if the tribe, because at that point the Camp 4 is within the reservation, it's part of the Fee to Trust process, so at that point in time the tribe can build anything they want. Is that really what the county wants to agree to? I just, what am I missing? And this lady that spoke just a while ago made a good point. Not very often does everybody come away with going, gee, what a wonderful deal this is. And I suspect there is a certain amount of pressure from Washington to try and get the county to do something so that some bill doesn't get passed. But at some point, it just seems like the county just seemed to say no. You know, there's nothing wrong with saying no, especially if it's perceived that what it is we're agreeing to is unfair. I mean, I appreciate the tribe wanting to have housing for its members. Everybody in here wants housing. But it shouldn't be at the expense of everyone else. I mean, it is one nation under God. So I don't know how we end up with two sovereign states. That part doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jerry Shepard, followed by Lansing Duncan.
Good evening. Thank you for having this meeting for us. I feel a little bit like the child who is watching the parade and wants to say, but the king has no clothes. And exactly why I'm thinking that is something you opened the meeting saying, Joan, about 1491 is going to go forward whether we have this agreement or we don't have this agreement. And I would like to proffer to everybody in this room that we don't need this agreement. We have fought 1491 before. You have heard from numbers of people saying that we know what we want for our community. We have a community plan in place, and we don't need another agreement. We can go forward and take our chances with 1491. It's been defeated. We are vocal, we are organized, we have our rights, we are also sovereign, and there is absolutely, utterly no reason why that land has to be taken into trust for a special interest group. We don't need that, and I think our community is capable of standing up to that. I want to mention another thing that you said to us a few weeks ago, Joan, about better half a loaf than no loaf at all. I couldn't disagree more with that statement. We don't need half a loaf, and we don't need the crumbs that they are throwing to you. You need to stand up. You need to understand that you have your community to look out for. You have your community behind you. You have your community supporting you. And I hope you have heard loud and clear from your community tonight where our wishes are, and I hope you'll continue to represent us. Thank you.
The final speaker slip is for Lansing Duncan.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I really appreciate it, first of all, that this meeting is being held. Looking back on this, and I must say I have a pretty long perspective here, the first editorial I wrote that stated that the plans of the tribe were on a collision course. That was actually what the news press put in the headline for the editorial with the community. As a planning commissioner for the San Ynez Valley from 1995 to 2000, I saw a lot of those early stages of the tribe gaining influence and acquiring parcels, and what was happening both at the state and the national level. And because I was acutely aware of that, I made sure I contacted my elected officials at all levels and wrote editorials, joined organizations, created organizations that would try and point out the concerns that have been expressed by all my neighbors here tonight. Because these are real concerns. When you have a sovereign nation within another community, obviously there are going to be issues that need to be addressed. And as Wendy Tillman said, not everybody is going to be happy. And Wendy also has a pretty long perspective on this, I would say. As a founding member of the San Ynez Valley Alliance, I helped create a coalition called the Camp 4 Coalition for Good Governance, where we joined in other organizations from other parts of the county. And that was one of the things we felt we needed. We needed people like SBCAN and CPA and the Montecito Association to be aware of these issues that you're all concerned about here. The issues of planning, of taxation, environmental impacts, all these things that arise when you have the fee to trust process. So as somebody who's very aware of the conflicts that are involved, I have to thank you all for getting together and coming to some sort of agreement. It may be tentative, it may not be complete, it may not satisfy anybody, but simply to have an agreement is groundbreaking in itself. And I have to say, as an experienced politician, I never made it to the Board of Supervisors, thank God. Okay, the Planning Commission was enough for me, and also chairing the GPAC, the General Plan Advisory Committee that helped write and create the community plan. So I'm very aware of what the community plan involves and the sort of vision it has for our future. It's important to have this as a first step. And I appreciate that this can be seen as a precedent and a principle to go further from this. I do want to say, however, one final point. Sitting in the place where you guys have been, it's sometimes a hell of a lot easier to say no than to figure out the terms that you would say yes. And sometimes you're being forced to do that. So this community, I really appreciate everybody who's come here tonight to speak to those concerns, and I hope you can continue to try and address those, all of you, for your various constituencies. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was our final public speaker.
That was the final slip I've received.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for being so honest in sharing your views. I would like to reiterate a couple of points. The first point is that I have worked as a lawyer, as have many of the people who've testified here today. It is very common to have an agreement in principle that outlines the key terms and then to go back and work out the details. In this case, the details are rather complex. We have 1,000 pages, 2-volume environmental assessment. We have HR 1491, and we have this enforceable contract, a private contract that if it is approved in itself would be enforceable, and these all have to be reconciled. And as you said, there are many complex issues that come up after you have some general terms. So it's not that we're trying to keep something away from you. We came to you as soon as we had an agreement in principle that we could share. We're now about to have a final draft agreement that will go on the website this week, and we will be having at least 2 more meetings here in the Valley, one in the AM on October 5th and one in the PM on October 9th. And it's clear that even though many of you thought the principles were fairly straightforward, there are many questions to be answered that were not fully understood about enforceability, about water, about land use. And so we'll be coming back to answer those in greater detail and to be able to point to the agreement where we believe those have been addressed. So the PowerPoint, as you know, is on the website. The proposed agreement in full will be on the website later this week. The environmental assessment and all the mitigations will be on the website. 1491 will be on the website, and responses to questions will start going up on the website soon. Our next steps are this week we'll have the full agreement, the October 5th meeting, the October 9th meeting, and then consideration by the Board of Supervisors is scheduled for October 17th. I want to emphasize that no agreement will be finalized until it's approved by both the tribal membership and the Board of Supervisors. So the Board of Supervisors is another meeting to where this can be heard. I'd like to thank both Supervisor Williams and Chairman Khan and all the tribal members and especially everybody here in the community tonight. And I'd like to let Supervisor Williams and then Chairman Khan say a few final words here.
Well, I of course had to want to answer all your questions, and I know Joan does. That's not the format we did tonight, precisely because we want to get everything absolutely right in how we answer it. We will make sure that the answers are public and are on the website. We, of course, especially want to answer the ones about water and about gaming on site, all that sort of stuff. But I want to thank you for being here, not only for being here tonight, but for your willingness to be engaged in your community. If we had a lot more of this in this world, we would be a lot better off. Because of your vigilance, we have kept the community's interests and perspective in mind throughout the process. I can't help but be a little disappointed in the tone tonight, but I can tell you that the two things that for me were most important after hearing from you for many years while I represented you in the state legislature is the need to preserve as much open space as is realistically possible because this is the gateway to the valley, and the enforceability of such a covenant. Those were the two issues that I heard about the most over the last 7 years. And I can tell you those are in this agreement. And I would not have supported it, nor would Joan have, if we felt that would be better off without the agreement. We look forward to your input in these next meetings and trying to move forward. Thank you.
Well, I would certainly want to recognize the multiple processes and opportunities that we've had every step of the way. And I know that Joan and Das came on later in the process, and I know that we've had a number of meetings to discuss some of these issues. And as I listened here today to some of the concerns, I felt like this was the first meeting that we had. And some of the concerns that both Supervisor Williams and Supervisor Hartman had brought up. And so, you know, I feel confident that there are some answers, you know, to come, and you know, we'll continue to work hard. As I stated earlier, we are closer than we have ever been to at least having a dialogue that is respectful, that is open. And that's what the tribe's perspective has been all along. You know, we show up to these meetings hoping to find opportunity to strengthen our communities together, and we'll continue to do so through this process. So, thank you both.
Thank you. The Santa Ynez Valley is an amazing and very special place, and it is because the community has been vigilant in protecting it through the blueprint, through the community plan, and through ongoing vigilance and attending meetings and voicing your concerns. We've heard you tonight. We're going to follow up. Please keep the faith. Stay with us. We hear you.